It's a frightening concept, but it's true. It's reality. There are dangerous criminals, cold-blooded killers in some cases, living among us. Convicted murderers like Charles Manson are now eligible for parole.
He's telling me that I'm wrong because I can't fix their world for them. They keep wanting me to fix their world in handcuffs.
Preppy murderer Robert Chambers is also up for parole in December. Serial murderer and rapist Bobby Joe Long is now fighting the death penalty, while Craig Price, who murdered women and children, is now eligible for parole. The question we're asking today is, should these killers be given a second chance? Or should we join a growing fight across this nation to keep these convicted murderers behind bars? That's the question we're asking you right now on Rolonda. It's hard to imagine, but just think about this. Imagine discovering that one of your family members was brutally attacked, viciously murdered by somebody living in your own neighborhood. Then imagine going through weeks and weeks of heart-wrenching testimony, only to find out that the man convicted of murdering your loved one could be right back on the streets with all of his criminal records sealed. Well, that's what could happen if the courts release one convict who is serving time in Warwick, Rhode Island.
Craig, what are you going to do when you get out?
Get off my yo, that's what you can do. Get off my side.
Are you sorry for what you did, Craig? You're sorry for killing those people?
You are listening to Craig Price, who was just 13 years old when he murdered Rebecca Spencer back in 1987. Just shy of his 16th birthday, Price butchered a mother and her 2 children. Receiving the maximum sentence allowed for a juvenile in the state of Rhode Island, Price is now eligible for parole on his 21st birthday, October 11th. This has triggered a firestorm of protests from citizens who consider Price to be a serial killer. In fact, some call him a monster who should remain behind bars. Now, while some say that if a person serves their time, they should be released, this does not sit well with Carl Beatty. He is the brother of one of Price's murder victims. He is here today with Police Captain Kevin Collins, who worked on the case and also argues that Craig Price is one convict who should stay behind bars. I thank you both for being here with us today. Carl, I know that the reason you wanted to be here was this is part of your fight to try to keep Craig Price behind bars. What exactly happened? I understand that your sister was one of Price's victims.
Yeah, my sister, Rebecca, was his first victim. Mm-hmm. She was killed in July of 1987 by him when he was 13 years old. 13.
Can you tell me how the murder happened, how it all?
Well, from what we understand, he broke in through a back window, confronted my sister, and stabbed her 58 times.
58 times?
Yes.
Gets a lot worse.
How much worse?
Well, what's frightening about this case, and I've called him a monster many times, and a serial killer, and he certainly is. It's interesting that you had Charles Manson on the monitor there, because I've said that California has Charles Manson, and Wisconsin has Jeffrey Dahmer, and Warwick, Rhode Island has Craig Price. And I think you'll get an indication of that from what I'm about to tell you. After Craig Price, at 13 years old, killed Rebecca Spencer, he lived a totally normal life for 2 years. That's, if you understand the pressures of adolescence as difficult as that is, he went 2 years.
When you say he lived a normal life at 13...
Lived a normal life, as far as any other 13-year-old adolescent would. He went to school, he acted normally, he was well-liked, he had a good personality.
He wasn't punished for the murder?
He was not apprehended.
Uh-huh.
That's what's frightening about this. And during that 2-year period, he acted very normally, and that is very, it's one of these commonalities associated with these type of killers where they lead 2 lives. One of them is very private, and they don't share that with anybody, and that's where they plan, stalk, and kill. And the other life is the one that they act very normally with society.
Explain to us why he wasn't apprehended. Did you not know that he was the murderer at that time?
Well, no, there was an intense investigation, obviously, but certainly no one thought that Craig Price could be involved in such a savage murder at that time at the age of 13 years old. And there were other suspects that the focus was on, certainly not a 13-year-old neighbor that lived several houses from her.
This was a neighbor, a guy in the neighborhood. Did your sister know him at all?
Not personally. I mean, my sister had seen him playing in the street with the rest of the kids, you know, coming and going. He only lived 2 houses away.
Wow. After something, I mean, how does a family move on after something so tragic happens?
It takes a while, and then, you know, eventually I guess you learn to put it in perspective and try to move on with your life. Otherwise it could be all-consuming, or you couldn't carry on. If you let it do that, I'm sure it could be. But somehow you have to put it in some little block somewhere and, you know, carry on.
You said that things got worse. I mean, it's hard to imagine that after a stabbing of 58 times and the loss of a sister that things get worse than that.
Well, I think what you're about to hear, you'll agree. 2 years later, within 2 months of that, on September 1st, 1989, Craig Price then went 2 houses down in the opposite direction from where Rebecca Spencer lived. He then broke into a home of a mother and 2 children. Joan Heaton, she was 39 years old, and she lived there with her 2 daughters. One was age 10 and one was age 8. He confronted them in the middle of the night. He stabbed the 10-year-old girl, Jennifer, 62 times.
Oh, God.
He stabbed the 8-year-old girl 8 times, and he crushed her skull. He stabbed these little girls in front of their mother, and he stabbed the mother repeatedly in front of the little girls. He crushed the ribs of the mother, Joan Heaton. He strangled her, and he bit her face. He was apprehended for these crimes 17 days later. And during that time, for the 17 days, he acted perfectly normal. And as we learned later on during the investigation, he slept until noon the next day after butchering that entire family.
Unbelievable. You got a confession from him as you were in this case. Can you tell me, how do you get a confession from a murderer like that?
Well, we had developed a circumstantial case against him, which led to a search warrant being executed at his mother's house. And we found some overwhelming evidence that linked him to the crimes. And using that evidence during the interview, he eventually confessed to committing not only the Heaton murders, but also the Rebecca Spencer murder 2 years previously.
Did he show any sign of remorse? Did he say he needed help? Did he just, his mood was, how would you characterize his mood?
Very matter of fact, and it was quite chilling to sit there as an experienced policeman and to listen to a kid 15 years old be matter of fact about describing how he killed 4 people, and especially a mother and 2 little girls.
Carl, October 11th is a big day for Craig Price.
October 11th, you know, by state law, is the day that he's due to be released for the murder of 4 people.
And that is because he was tried as a juvenile?
Yes, ma'am.
I will point this out, that right in the wake of Price's sentencing, Rhode Island legislature did pass a law allowing juveniles accused of violent crimes to be tried as adults. There were 43 such cases, 9 of them murder, but this case didn't fall into that.
No, we were unable to do that retroactively.
So what I hear you saying is that Craig Price, after he stabbed and maimed and killed 4 people, could be back on the streets on his birthday, October 11th.
Well, the state is trying diligently and acting very responsibly to prevent that from happening.
Let's talk more about efforts to keep hardened criminals like this behind bars. And let's also ask the question, is that fair? You know, while the citizens of Warwick are anxiously awaiting the outcome of the Price case, there is a mother right here in New York City, many of you may have seen in some of the reports lately, gearing up to keep a man known as the preppy murderer behind bars. We'll talk with her as soon as we come back.
We got in an argument. I picked up a bat.
Controlling your anger before it controls you. Next, Rolonda. We are talking today about some victims' efforts across the nation to keep dangerous criminals behind bars. You had a question.
Yes, I do. I can't believe they're considering letting this man out of jail after killing 2 people, stabbing them 58 times, 60 times.
4 people he killed.
4 people, but that's a vicious murder. I believe that if someone takes a life, their life should be taken from them.
I was mentioning to someone during the break, why in the world should any murderer ever get out, whether they're executed or not? They should never be out. If they want to be rehabilitated, if there is such a thing in prison, to be rehabilitated, then why not just have them do good programs, set up positive programs in the prison for other prisoners, be taken into some local community, do community work, and be taken back to the prison.
Captain,
they should never be allowed out.
Right. Captain Collins, why does it work that way? Thank you. Why isn't there more rehabilitation? Just like the gentleman said, why aren't those things happening?
Well, I think they have happened, and I think, especially in the juvenile justice system, as it relates to Craig Price, that's been going on for 30 or 40 years. There's always been prevention programs. There's always been the effort to rehabilitate these individuals, but there's been a failure on the part of a lot of people, a lot of child advocates, to realize that some of these kids are, number one, not amenable to treatment or unwilling to be treated. And some of them just choose to vegetate and bide their time and simply be released when they reach the age of majority. And that's outrageous, and I think that's a sentiment across the United States today.
That's what scares me, is because once they're in prison, they're angrier and probably more hostile once they get out if they've not had rehabilitation or any therapy whatsoever. Yes, sir.
My question is, what's his state right now, his mental state?
Well, that's a good question. I should proceed that just by letting you know that since this individual went into the juvenile detention center in Rhode Island, he refused all psychiatric evaluations with the advice of his attorney. And that was part of a strategy employed because he wants his freedom. So that forced the state to take some unprecedented action.
So if he had had the psychiatric treatment, it would have been on the record that he might have to stay in prison because he might be crazy, or what?
Exactly. His lawyer advised him that the state could use the results of that evaluation against him to possibly commit him at a mental institution. So for 5 years, he chose not to submit to that examination. He recently has taken that examination, and the results indicate everything that we've been saying for 5 years. And now, still there is the debate as to what can be done now to keep him in.
And October 11th, his birthday, he could possibly get released.
Well, there was an interesting development here. Very recently, a juvenile judge in the system, I think, made a courageous decision saying he was going to keep him in past the age of 21. It's never been done before, and there's obviously and will be an immediate challenge in the appellate courts on that.
Yeah, and probably a lot of it has to do with how the community has been fighting this so much. You know, another person, let me bring in, who has been in court fighting is Ellen Levin.
No way. My daughter's dead. Will you get out of here?
Ellen Levin's 18-year-old daughter, Jennifer, was murdered in Central Park by the now infamous preppy murderer, Robert Chambers. Chambers was offered a plea bargain and was sentenced to only 5 to 15 years for the murder. He is eligible for parole at the end of this year. Ellen has started Justice for All. It is a lobbying group committed to keeping criminals like her daughter's killer behind bars. And in 2 months, Ellen Levin is going to be in court once again, fighting again to keep her daughter's killer in prison. Ellen, thank you so much for being with us.
It's a pleasure being here.
How hard is it to fight to keep a murderer behind bars?
It's hard, and it's just unfair that we have to do that, especially the families of murder victims. As the New York state law, there's good time, which means the criminal will only serve 2/3 of his sentence no matter what. So a 5 to 15 year sentence with Robert Chambers means he will only serve 10 years maximum unless he's bad in prison. Now, he's been bad in prison, but I don't know how much time they take away from his good time. So rather than being able to serve the maximum as he should, because 15 years for murder I think is the least we can do, he'll be out way before that. What we do for Justice for All, and we don't do it just in the Robert Chambers case, we do it whenever we feel that a prisoner is being released way before he served his maximum, at least in a heinous crime. We do a letter writing and petition campaign. And it's interesting, I've seen this grow because I see what happens with the public wanting so badly to get involved, rather than sitting around and saying, well, what can I do? I mean, this is outrageous. It really does give the public a voice, and after all, this is a government by the people and for the people.
And you're finding that the people are supporting you. I mean, a lot of folks, I wonder if there are people who say, look, I don't want to get involved. It hasn't happened to me. It's not going to come to my neighborhood.
I don't personally take around the petitions, quite honestly. It's too hard for me. I don't want to get into conversation with everybody. But I think the organization maybe sends out 50 to 100 petitions, and what happens is people start Xeroxing them and faxing them, and it takes on a life of its own. It's quite amazing. Last parole, which was 2 years ago, we got over 50,000 signatures from as far away as Canada. People
now,
just being outraged.
Do you think that's because, I know that your case was such a famous case. I wonder if the cases where people don't necessarily know, like Carl, in your situation, are you getting as much support?
Yes, it did. When we found out that it was getting closer to, last year, the October release date this year, we started in July running a petition to ask the governor of the state of Rhode Island to do something to keep this individual behind bars. Okay. In a matter of 45 days, we had a rally at the State House and presented the governor with over 27,000 signatures.
Okay, I'm going to, toward the end of the show, we're also going to, for those of you at home who want to join the bandwagon, if you're concerned about things going on in your own community, we're going to give you some places where you can call and you can wage that fight if that's what you choose to do. Our next guest is going to tell us that if you're going to fight the battle to keep a killer behind bars, though, it's some hard work. It's going to take a toll on your life as well if you are a victim's family. We'll be right back with her right after this.
Are you that high school nerd who is now sexy and successful? Wouldn't you love your high school tormentors to see you now? Call Rolonda at 1-800-291-2535.
Welcome back. We are debating today whether it's really constitutional for citizens to fight to keep hardened criminals behind bars. You had what to say?
I was commenting to a gentleman's comment earlier about putting a murderer in prison and leave him there. They should never release him out. But it's financially, you couldn't do that. And like you got people on death row, that's a great expense to keep somebody on death row. You shouldn't have a death row. If you go to death row, you go there and wait. I believe in capital punishment. I believe it should fit the crime. So you shouldn't have a death row. If you did, you committed a number of murders, then someone should take your life. Because therefore, if you feel that you can take life, you don't respect it. That's basically it.
I appreciate the comment that you brought up also, because it does cost money to keep people in prison forever. I mean, that's the other side of it, too. You had a comment.
Yes. I just wanted to state that I honestly think, as this gentleman has already stated, that the punishment should meet the severity of the crime. Without a doubt, murderers should probably be dealt with in a similar way. The other statement I'd like to make is the fact that I think that the age limit that is set on the juvenile age, 17 I believe is the current in New York, should be made lower. It should be possibly placed down to even 13 or 14. In many cases, children at that age are well on their way to adulthood, both physically and hormonally and mentally. And as this young lady has stated beforehand, when I was discussing with her earlier, they have more time to meditate on similar things as well. And children, for the most part, are smarter, I think, than most adults will give them credit for.
Okay. All right. As if Lisa McVeigh, our next guest, is not already haunted by memories of the man who abducted and raped her, she now finds herself going back and forth to court because his lawyers are trying to get him off death row. I'd like you to welcome Lisa McVeigh. Lisa, it just seems hard to imagine that an attorney is fighting to keep a man who abducted and raped. And I understand you were not the only victim. What happened to you that day?
Well, I was 17 years old, and I was working. I had gotten off of work, and my only transportation at the time was a bicycle. And I just want to stress, it's been 10 years, and it's very hard and difficult. It's affected my life 10 years ago, and it affects my life just as much today, if not sometimes more, depending on what I'm going through.
You were riding your bicycle.
I was riding my bicycle. I was always observant about things around me. I noticed there was a van parked by a ballpark. There was a car parked in the middle of a church parking lot. It seemed kind of odd to be parked in the middle of a parking lot. And I had the strangest feeling, and I was kind of uncomfortable. It was late at night. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I decided to work a late shift, just to bring some extra money in. And before I knew it, I was abducted off my bike. I was grabbed horribly, brutally. I felt like it was 3 people that just grabbed me. And it turned out to be 1.
I understand that we are lucky to even have you here with us today based upon this man's record. Can you tell us a bit more about the man accused of abducting and raping you?
Yes, he killed 10 women in Tampa Bay area. November 3rd, 1984, I was abducted. 2 weeks later, with the help of me, I left clues behind, like my hair. I had long hair past my waist. I just remember ripping my bread out and throwing it under the bed. He took me to his apartment.
You were trying to leave signs.
I was trying to leave signs. If I died, I wanted to die with pride. I wanted to die with dignity. I wanted to pass on, to let them know that I was still fighting without using any kind of physical force. I was trying to survive no matter what it took.
How long did he abduct you for?
26 hours.
26 hours.
I was brutally raped repeatedly. Ways I don't even like to discuss on TV.
All right.
It's not necessary.
What was his sentence?
His sentence was, my case was never tried. He made a deal with them, confessions and the other murders. He led them to the bodies. He discussed how he brutally raped and murdered them. And somehow down the line, I don't know what, I'm not sure of, but my case was never tried. My case was not important enough. It wasn't as important as murder.
So basically they had gotten him on the other killings, so
Yes.
This was just
swept underneath the carpet, as you may say.
I want to continue. We've got to take a break, and when we come back, I'd like to just, from a person who has been through this, when you find out that this guy could be out, what does that do for your life, and what are you thinking about all of this? We'll be right back in a minute.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of Rolonda, and I hope that you'll subscribe and follow so many of my other activities on my Rolonda channel, including some stand-up comedy, some podcasts, some great auntie advice, and loads of laughs and lots of fun. So subscribe and stay tuned. Now, let's get back to the show.
Are stunned by your story. It's amazing how much strength you have to tell it. 26 hours of abduction, repeated rapes, snatching out your hair to leave symbols behind that you were fighting to live, and then to later find out that this man was a serial killer. You're lucky to be here. How did you get away from this man?
I just strongly believed just keeping it cool. And I'm not saying this works for everybody. I am speaking from myself, for me only. It worked for me.
How did you eventually escape?
Manipulation, reverse psychology, I believe. I remember saying, well, if you keep me here, I won't say anything. I'll be your friend. I remember I kept saying, I'll be your friend. I'll be here for you. I'll do anything you want to, just don't kill me. Spare my life, and that's all I want.
You had no idea you were talking to a serial killer?
No, I did not.
When you found that out, that 10 other women had been killed by this same man, what went through your soul?
I had a very sickening pain in my stomach. I remember going to the shower and scrubbing myself off. I remember thinking, pull yourself together. You've got to help the police find this man, because he's not going to be caught unless I don't come forward and do something about it. I didn't want to hide, and I don't want to hide now.
And there were so many other cases, so many other killings, that your case never even made it to court.
No.
Now, what if the courts choose to, can he get out at any time, or?
Not that I'm aware of right now. As of this year, I did go back to court after 5 years, and it was very hard. And the Supreme Court overruled one of his death sentences. And I'm not sure how many he has, but I know he had a couple on certain murders.
So Lisa, as we're listening to this story, and while we might not have been in a tragic situation, what do you think American citizens should know as we talk about should hardened criminals be allowed to be released?
I'm going to say that I agree with the gentleman who is saying rehabilitation in the prisons. I'm all for that. I'm for, in my state of mind right now, learning to forgive people for what they do to you. Because if you don't, you live with anger and resentment for the rest of your life, and it's not good for you. I believe they can go to a program to where they can get rehabilitated, but keep them in prison for God's sake, because we have children. I have a beautiful 7.5-year-old daughter, and I am proud, and I want to see her flourish into a beautiful woman. I want to see her make a life for herself. I want that, and I want to fight to keep the justice intact, to work for the people. And that's the way it's got to be.
While Lisa and Ellen and Carl and many other victims of vicious crimes throughout the country are saying keep these hardened criminals behind bars, there is the other argument. Don't the Craig Prices and the Robert Chambers deserve a chance to get out of prison and start a new life? Well, we have a New York defense attorney, Bill Arenwald, who says yes, they do. And Bill, we're going to get your position right after this.
Check row out. We have found some of the funniest, the strangest, and the wildest new talents you've ever seen.
They're too late for April Fool and too soon for Halloween.
But only one can be the best.
Get that barbecue pit ready, I'm telling you.
Who will we choose?
Where's the envelope, please?
Watch Row's second annual talent competition next Rolonda.
Welcome back, everybody. everybody, as we continue our conversation, Lisa, one of the ladies in the audience was asking, how did the man who abducted and raped you, did he release you or did you escape?
I got that man some way, somehow to release me. He just let me go. He asked me what neighborhood I lived in and he dropped me off. He actually took me there and he released me. He dropped me off and let me go.
Unbelievable. Let me bring in Mr. Aaronwald, who takes the position that even to try to keep these hardened criminals behind bars, after you've heard stories as horrendous as the ones we've heard today, you're saying that that's unconstitutional to keep them in even beyond their release date.
Well, what I'm saying is that for every crime there's a maximum penalty, and when someone is sentenced to serve whatever the sentence is and they've completed that sentence, basic constitutional due process requires that that person be released.
Even when you're talking like a Charlie Manson?
Well, Charlie Manson has been denied parole. I mean, it seems that you're really talking apples and oranges. With respect to early release, which is parole, that's something that the parole board will decide. They will decide whether that person has demonstrated the right to be released. If the parole board decides not to, the person will be continued to his sentence. I think in the Chambers case, he's been denied parole one time already. Manson has been denied parole consistently. Well, what I'm saying is that...
the release date, which is separate from parole.
That's right. If someone is sentenced to a specific term of imprisonment, once they've served that term, they have paid their debt to society and now must be released. The real problem is that the recidivism rate in this country is exceedingly high. The reason for that is because there is no rehabilitative program in prison. We're warehousing criminals. That's all we're really doing. Sentencing is designed to accomplish three objectives: punishment, deterrence, and rehabilitation. The punishment is when you send someone to jail and deprive them of their liberty. In terms of deterrence, the recidivism rate shows that we're not deterring anybody from committing crimes. And rehabilitation doesn't take place. I mean, it's a fallacy to think that our prisons really are rehabilitating individuals.
So should we release them if they don't seem to have been rehabilitated nor deterred?
Well, since constitutionally there's no way that you can keep someone in jail after they've served their sentence, it seems to me what we've got to do is we've got to marshal and focus our resources on trying to establish effective rehabilitation programs. And I'm not suggesting that everyone can be rehabilitated. Obviously, there are some people that cannot be rehabilitated. The answer is not to keep them in jail beyond their sentence release date, because that is unconstitutional.
Ellen?
Yes, I wanted to say it's true. It is unconstitutional to keep them beyond their release date. However, you know, you can't keep a man in prison, or a person in prison, excuse me, for a crime that he has not yet to commit. But if their past shows that they have, like, repeat sexual offenders and pedophiles that cannot be cured, it is almost a given that they will go out and repeat the crime again. Washington State has a very interesting law, which, I mean, I don't think it could ever fly in New York State. We're much too liberal. But when a repeat offender comes up for parole, a sexual offender or a pedophile, he is reviewed not only by the parole board, but by a board of certified psychiatrists. And if they find that he is not capable of mixing with society, he is remanded to a mental institution, until which time they find that he is cured. And of course, there is no cure, so he probably would be there for the rest of his life.
From the audience.
I have a comment. I believe the only type of rehabilitation that could be effective out there is a boot camp rehabilitation, where all these criminals should go there first. Have a boot camp rehabilitation where these guys have some hard labor, because prison to them is a cush job. They just go there,
3 hot
in and
meals
out.
a day.
That's right.
And half the folks you already know from the street, right?
They're probably watching this show right now.
Yeah, but watching the show right now. But as a taxpayer, would you be willing to pay for that boot camp?
I would rather pay for that than paying for them to sit in a cell watching TV, hanging out with the boys.
Okay.
This gentleman says it's unconstitutional to keep them beyond the time that they've been told that they have to get. But they don't serve that anyway. In other words, if a murderer is assigned or is told he's going to get 20 years to life, he's looking for parole already at 15 or 20 years. There shouldn't be any parole for murderers. No parole.
I have a question for the captain. When you were interrogating Craig Price and you had him in custody, did you ask him, or did you look at any aspects of his social life or family life? Because he might have been influenced by, you know, something, because such a young boy, he had some influence from somewhere, you know.
Well,
he's
sure.
not a bad seed or anything. He must have had some influence.
There are some bad seeds out there. There definitely are. We made general inquiries, and a lot of it didn't come out until a recent evaluation. But I just want to make a comment, if I can, reference to the defense attorney. And also generally what's been talked about today. Number one, there's a lot of argument for truth in sentencing. And what we've really done in society, not only dealing with adults, but especially with the juvenile population here, facing this violent epidemic crime wave being perpetrated by them, is that we have failed to put a real value on human life. That's what we failed to do.
Yes.
And to think that somebody would go to or take the defense of a man that did what he did to this young lady or her, or take somebody or somebody that would defend Craig Price. Well, I believe everybody should have the best possible defense. But you know something, one thing we've failed to really do in society, everybody wants to talk prevention and rehabilitation. We've really failed to meet a balance for that protection of society.
Well, let me just point this out. Just last month, Sammy Bull Gravano, you know the guy who got mob boss Gotti in jail? Well, he cut a deal, apparently. Just last month, he got only 5 years for killing 19 people. He could be released from prison in 5 months. Our next guest says it's the judicial system that has people getting away with murder. We'll talk about loopholes, plea bargaining, and what that means for you right after this. Check Row Out. Are you ready over there? Girlfriends, you don't want to miss this show. It's Cosmopolitan's hottest, hunkiest, real-life bachelors.
I'm a single man, and I want to be your dessert.
And they're ready to bare their sexy secrets.
I've learned to love donuts, and baby, I'm full of sugar.
And celebrate good times with Kool and the Gang. The real-life bachelors of Cosmopolitan magazine on the next Rolonda. To meet Bob and Marjorie Smith. They were just telling me here that their son Rob was murdered in Dallas after an armed robbery, murdered by 4 juveniles who were out on a wilding spree. 2 of the 4 gang members were recently released from juvenile prisons, is that right?
That's correct.
And one 16-year-old in the gang had 25 prior arrests and several convictions. As you listen to this as parents, probably still in mourning for your son, what do you say to America?
Well, I think that I agree that if somebody has committed a crime and an armed robbery type crime, a violent crime, they should serve the time and they should serve a maximum amount of time. Just because they're juveniles doesn't change the fact that they are criminals, and they're violent criminals, and they will commit crimes as long as they're out.
Mm-hmm. This loss, I'm sure, I see you wearing, is this your son, Rob? Yes. On your chest. Gosh, if his life stands for anything right now, what do you hope will come out of this?
I hope that we realize that these juveniles are not Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn anymore. They're not just stealing cars or apples. They're out there killing people every day.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bill, you get an awful lot of heat, as you heard from Captain Collins here, about how can you defend people like this who are out murdering and pillaging and...
Well, I mean, I'm not the least bit ashamed about the kind of work that I do. I mean, basically, defense lawyers who represent people accused of crime serve a very important function, and that function basically is to protect the constitutional rights of the accused. And we do that every day. I don't really think there's so much disagreement between the people on the panel today. I mean, I think everybody pretty much agrees that sentencing should be sufficient to meet the crime. I think the real problem is that there's a misconception here, and the misconception is that we're confusing parole or early release with sentencing. When a judge sentences someone, the judge is not saying that that person must be paroled or released at a certain point. The judge is sentencing that individual, and he is leaving it to the discretion of the parole authorities whether that person should be released early. And not every jurisdiction, not every state has parole. For example, federally. In the federal system, parole has been abolished since 1987. There is no more parole in the federal system. When a judge sentences an individual, that person serves every bit of the time. There's no more good time in terms of federal sentencing. Mm-hmm. And whether or not a particular state wants to follow that lead is up to that state legislature.
While you're explaining, just explain what we mean when we say release date. In the court system, that means?
All right, well, in different states, there are different sentencing laws. Like in New York State, for example, we have indeterminate sentencing. Indeterminate sentencing would be, for example, in the case of someone accused of murder, 20 years to life. What that means is the person has to serve the 20 years less whatever good time allowance there is before they can be released. It doesn't mean they will be released in that time. If the parole authorities decide that that person should not be released, they can sit in jail for the rest of their life. In some jurisdictions, you have fixed sentencing, which means the judge sentences you to a certain amount of time. And when you serve that time, you must constitutionally be released.
Okay, and the question that we're asking on the show today, or what many people across America are asking, is do we or shouldn't we have the right to keep violent murderers and criminals behind bars even past that release date? And don't violent criminals, some people are arguing, have the right to have a second chance? That's what we're debating today. And joining this conversation now is former Queens District Attorney Alice Vax. She has written a book entitled Sex Crimes. It's a behind-the-scenes look at America's judicial system, particularly as it pertains to plea bargaining and loopholes in the system. Alex Vax says that is why criminals are back on the street many times, and when we come back, I'd like to hear what you have to say from behind the scenes. We'll be right back.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode of Rolonda, and I hope that you'll subscribe and follow so many of my other activities on my Rolonda channel, including some stand-up comedy, some podcasts, some great auntie advice, and loads of laughs and lots of fun. So subscribe and stay tuned. Now, let's get back to the show.
In the book that you have written, Sex Crimes, you take a look behind the scenes of the court system. And one of the things that you talk about, or a couple of things you talk about, plea bargaining, loopholes, that these are some of the reasons why hardened criminals are getting out. Do you think we should fight to have release dates null and void?
Well, null and void is a very broad way to say it, but I think that we have to start fighting against having predators in our communities. But I think we need to start the fight a lot earlier than a parole date. When the criminal justice system sees a predator, that's the point at which we have a chance to do something about him, and that's the point at which right now we're not doing enough.
What do you mean by that? Explain it.
The sentences are just insufficient for the crimes, especially with sex offenders who we know historically are going to reoffend. If we sentence them so that their real sentence, not the media sentence, not what it says in the newspaper, but their real sentences, they're eligible for release in 3 years, which is the national average for a convicted first-degree rapist. We are dooming all of society to be at risk to have that guy reoffend and victimize more people.
So you're saying the average time a convicted rapist spends behind bars is 3 years?
Yes.
And as we've also heard earlier, no rehabilitation in most cases?
Well, rehabilitation is really not the issue. If we've sent a message by the criminal justice system that what you did as a rapist is really not that serious, then having him join therapy groups is really not going to change whether he reoffends when he gets out. So what we have, it's not an issue of we need less defense attorneys. It's not even an issue of we need less defendants' rights.
What do we need?
We need prosecutors who are doing the job. And we don't have that. The Senate Judiciary Committee released a report last year. It said 98% of the victims of rape in this country, first-degree violent, forcible rape, 98% of them never see their assailant arrested, prosecuted, and sent to prison. We're not doing the job.
And why not?
Why not is because we've allowed our prosecutors to be politicians. Until we as a country say, do the job or lose your job, prosecutors are going to do business as usual.
From the audience.
I have a question for the defense attorney. How can you sit up there and defend all these criminals? But think about it. How about somebody in your family who got killed or whatever? Would you still sit up there and defend the person who did it?
Well, several years ago, my father was shot and killed in Queens, and I've still been a defense lawyer since. Defense lawyers who represent accused people serve the important function of protecting that person's rights and making sure that the person is not wrongfully convicted of a crime that he or she did not commit.
Question.
I was wondering if Lisa's going through some type of therapy now for what had happened to you.
Recently, I just approached, I made the first step, and I've made a few phone calls to get some therapy.
I think what Bill brought up, whatever side you're on, I think the Constitution, we keep going back. What is the right? And everybody has a right to defense. If you're one of those who believe that you have the right to keep a hardened criminal in prison, you can join the fight of many of the victims you've heard here today. Here are some numbers on your screen that you can call. You had something to say.
That gentleman and his wife had suffered the loss of their son. It made me just parallel with the Craig Price case. Because he was a juvenile, after butchering 4 people, he comes out on his birthday with a clean record. He can work at a daycare center where he can go after his prey of choice. He can buy a handgun, involve himself in any sensitive and opportunistic situation. That has to change. And not only that, he can move next to anybody that's here today. And that's wrong. People have the right to know.
And that's why we thought this show was something worth talking about. We'll see you next time on Rolonda.
For having every problem in the world. The stars of NBC's Another World